You and your son are not welcome here. Get out now." Ake Victoria's mother's voice was a whisper, but it cut through the freezing Wisconsin air like a blade. Victoria stood on the porch of the massive lakeside lodge, holding her 6-year-old son Alex's hand, his small grip tightened in hers. Inside, she could hear laughter, the clinking of glasses, the warmth of a fire. But outside the heavy timber door, the wind off Lake Geneva bit into their faces. "Mom," she said, her voice steady despite the shock. "It's Christmas Eve. Grandma invited us." "Capacity limit," her mother repeated, her eyes cold, showing no recognition that Victoria was her daughter or that Alex was her grandson. "Go home, Victoria. There's no room for you here." Then she shut the door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the sudden silence. Victoria didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even knock again. She turned around, picked Alex up, and walked back to her car. The walk was silent except for the crunch of snow under her boots and the distant sound of carolers from a nearby house. Alex was sobbing quietly against her shoulder. "Grandma hates me," he whispered, his voice muffled by her coat. "I made her a card." "No, baby," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "She doesn't hate you. She loves you. But how do you explain to a 6-year-old that the cruelty of adults has nothing to do with him? How do you explain that he is just collateral damage in a war he didn't start?" She buckled him into his car seat and handed him his tablet to distract him. Then she got into the driver's seat and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her phone sat silent in her purse. She knew if she checked it, there would be no messages from her mother apologizing, no texts from her father asking where they were, no calls from her brother Ethan wondering why his sister wasn't at the party. Because this wasn't an accident. This was the pattern. For years, Victoria had dragged around an invisible chain. It was heavy, made of hope, guilt, and the desperate need for validation. She had convinced herself that if she just tried harder, if she became more successful, more compliant, more perfect, they would finally see her. She had paid for her own college while they funded Ethan's 3 failed startups. She bought her own car while they leased Ethan a luxury SUV. She built a successful event planning business from scratch while Ethan managed their father's investments poorly. Every Christmas she showed up with expensive gifts and a practiced smile, hoping this would be the year she wouldn't be the punchline, the year she wouldn't be the afterthought. But standing on that porch, freezing while her mother lied to her face, something snapped. The chain didn't just break, it shattered. She started the car. The heater hummed to life, blowing cold air that matched the chill inside her chest. "We're going home, Alex," she said. "We're going to have our own Christmas." She put the car in drive and pulled away from the lodge, leaving the warmth and laughter behind. She was done. She was finally, truly done. About 10 minutes down the winding pine-lined driveway, her phone rang. The sound was loud in the quiet car and made her flinch. She glanced at the screen. Grandma Monica. Her stomach dropped. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to keep driving and never look back. But another part of her, the part that still loved the woman who had taught her to bake and read her stories, couldn't do it. She pulled over to the side of the road and answered. "Hello, Victoria?" Grandma Monica's voice was sharp, filled with confusion. "Where are you? Dinner is about to be served." "We left, Grandma," she said tightly. "Mom told us there was a strict capacity limit." She said we weren't on the list. There was a silence so deep, she thought the call had dropped. Then Grandma Monica spoke again. Her voice was low and dangerous, a tone Victoria had never heard directed at her. "Turn the car around," she commanded. "Right now." James, her husband, was sitting beside her with his hand on her shoulder. "Do it," he said quietly. Victoria looked at him, then back at the road ahead. The lodge was behind them, but her grandmother's command hung in the air. She could still feel the ghost of the cold porch and the sting of her mother's rejection. Every instinct screamed at her to keep driving, to protect herself and her son from more pain. But Grandma Monica was not like her parents. She was the one who taught. That respect is earned, not demanded. She was the one who built that lodge with her own money and grit. If she was angry, she wasn't angry at Victoria. She turned the car around. The drive back felt longer than the drive away. The anticipation sat heavy in her stomach. Alex had stopped crying and was watching her with wide, worried eyes. "Are we going back to the party?" he asked. "Yes, baby," she said. "Grandma Monica wants to see us." They pulled up to the lodge again. This time, Grandma Monica was waiting on the porch. She stood under the warm glow of the lanterns, wrapped in a thick wool coat, her silver hair shining in the light. Victoria's parents were nowhere in sight. As they stepped out of the car, Grandma Monica walked down the steps, her eyes fixed on Victoria. She didn't look angry. She looked formidable. "Victoria," she said, pulling her into a hug that smelled of lavender and would smoke. Then she knelt to Alex's level. "I am so sorry I wasn't at the door to greet you, my little man. I was busy in the kitchen, but I am so happy you're here." Alex's face lit up, his tears forgotten. "I made you a card. I can't wait to see it," she said, taking his hand. "Come inside. It's too cold out here." She led them into the lodge. The music stopped. Conversations faded. Victoria's mother, father, and her brother Ethan stood near the fireplace with drinks in hand, wearing the image of a perfect family they had practiced for years. When they saw Victoria and Alex, their smiles faltered. Her mother's face went pale. Grandma Monica didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the center of the room, still holding Alex's hand, and raised her voice. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" The silence was absolute. Even the fire seemed to quiet down. "You carry?" Grandma Monica said, turning to her daughter. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. "Would you please join me?" Her mother walked forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looked nervous, glancing around at the guests as if searching for an escape. "Yes, Mother, I have a question for you," Grandma Monica said, her eyes locking onto her. "Who told you there was a capacity limit for this dinner?" Her mother's eyes widened. She stammered, looking from Grandma Monica to Victoria and back again. "I assumed with the caterers in the seating." "You assumed," Grandma Monica repeated. "Oi zuandin me. I didn't lie," her mother protested, panic rising in her voice. "I just wanted everything to be perfect. It was a misunderstanding, Grandma Monica repeated. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Strange," she said calmly, "because I checked the security camera footage from the front porch while Victoria was driving back." She tapped the screen and held the phone up to a nearby microphone stand the band had been using. Her mother's voice filled the room, clear and cruel. "Strict capacity limit. We didn't get your RSVP in time. Go home, Victoria. There's no room for you here." A loud gasp rippled through the room. Guests exchanged horrified looks. Victoria's father stared at the floor. Ethan took a slow sip of his drink, looking bored, but her mother stood frozen, her face a mask of humiliation. The social image she had spent her life polishing shattered in seconds. Grandma Monica looked at her, then at the silent room. "There is always room for family in this house," she said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "Unless that family decides to close the door on their own blood." She turned to Victoria, her expression softening. "Victoria, you, Alex, and James sit here next to me." She pointed to the seats of honor at the head of the table. Her mother collapsed into a chair, weeping into a napkin. It was a performance Victoria had seen countless times. The martyr, the victim of her own good intentions. "I was just so stressed," she sobbed, searching the room for sympathy that never came. "I wanted tonight to be perfect for you. I thought if there were too many people, it would be overwhelming. I made a mistake. I'm only human." Victoria's father moved to comfort her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She's been under a lot of pressure." He said, "Mom, let's just move past this. We're all here now." "Yes," Ethan added, swirling the ice in his glass. "Can we eat? I'm Stevan." Grandma Monica did not sit. She remained standing at the head of the table, her hands resting on the polished wood. She looked at her daughter, then at her son-in-law, and finally fixed her gaze on Ethan. "We are not eating yet," she said calmly, her voice heavy with authority, "because we are not done with the truth." She turned to face Ethan fully. "Ethan, would you be a dear and fetch the antique Georgian silver service for the table? The one your grandfather bought in London. We should use the best for Christmas." The room went completely still. "Victoria, the silver service was massive, a tea and coffee set worth at least $50,000. It was kept locked in a display cabinet in the library. She knew every inch of it, because growing up she was the only one allowed to polish it. Ethan had never been allowed near it. He was careless. Ethan froze. He blinked rapidly. A bead of sweat formed on his temple despite the cold in the lodge. The silver?" he stammered. "I don't think we need it, Grandma. It's a hassle to bring out." "I want it," Grandma Monica said. "Go get it. It's not there," he muttered, his eyes darting toward his parents. Victoria's father stiffened. Her mother stopped crying instantly, her face turning from flush to gray. "Not there?" Grandma Monica asked calmly. "Where is it?" "I sent it out," her father blurted, his voice too loud, "for professional cleaning. As a surprise for you, we wanted it to shine." "Professional cleaning?" Grandma Monica repeated. She reached into her coat pocket again. This time, she didn't pull out her phone. She pulled out a pink slip of paper and slid it across the table toward him. "Is Fast Cash Pawn and Loan a professional cleaner, Timothy?" Her father looked like he had been punched. Ethan dropped his glass. It shattered against the hearth, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I found this in Ethan's room this morning," Grandma Monica said, her voice like steel. $150 worth of heirlooms pawned for $4,000 to cover what? More gambling debts. Another failed scheme. She turned to her daughter. "And you knew," she said. "That is why you didn't want Victoria here tonight." The truth hit Victoria like a physical blow. It was never about capacity. It was never about seating. "I would have noticed," she whispered. "I always checked the cabinet. I always polished the silver on Christmas Eve." "Exactly," Grandma Monica said. "You needed Victoria gone not because she is difficult, but because she is the only one in this family with enough integrity to notice a crime. You turned away your own daughter to protect a thief." The silence in the room turned heavy with disgust. The guests no longer looked uncomfortable. They looked appalled. The family was no longer seen as elite. They were exposed. Ethan stood abruptly. "It was my inheritance anyway," he snapped. "I just took an advance." "It was not your inheritance," Grandma Monica said sharply. "It was my legacy. And you sold it for scraps." She didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She walked to the fireplace, picked up the poker, and stirred the flames as if clearing the air. "Timothy, you carry," she said, without turning around. "You have lived in the guest cottage rent-free for 10 years. You treated it as your birthright. Pack your things. You have until midnight." "Mom," her father pleaded, his voice cracking. "It's Christmas. Where will we go?" "There's a Motel 6 on the highway," Grandma Monica replied calmly. "I checked. They have capacity." She turned to Ethan, who had collapsed into a chair with his head in his hands. "And you," she said, "you are no longer welcome on this property. I am removing you from my will tomorrow morning. The entire estate, the land, the investments, everything goes to Victoria." "You can't do that," her mother shrieked. "She's just Victoria. She doesn't know how to manage an estate or a family." Victoria looked at them, really looked at them. For the first time, she didn't see the giants who had controlled her happiness for years. She saw 3 small, desperate people shivering inside a house they had never deserved, the invisible chain that had bound her to them, the need for their approvals. The fear of their rejection was gone. It laid down the floor broken by the weight of their own greed. "I am family," she said, her voice calm and steady. "And you told me to go home, so I am." She gestured toward the door. "This is my home now. Please leave." Her father looked at her, then at Grandma Monica, then at the guests who were openly watching with judgment in their eyes. He finally understood there was no way out. No charm, no lie, no manipulation would fix this. "Let's go," he muttered, grabbing her mother's arm. They shuffled out into the cold, passing the exact spot where they had left Victoria standing an hour earlier. The heavy timbered door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the cold, the lies, and the toxicity. The room was silent for a moment. Then Grandma Monica walked over to the stereo and pressed play. Soft jazz filled the lodge. "Well," she said, smoothing her coat, "I believe we have a dinner to enjoy." 1 year later, the fire in the lodge crackled warm and bright. The smell of cinnamon and roasting turkey filled the air. Alex sat on the rug, tearing open a present, his laughter clear and happy. The lodge looked different. Victoria and James had spent the past year renovating, removing the heavy dark drapes her mother once loved, and letting in light. They had turned the guest cottage into an art studio for Alex and a workshop for James. Her parents were now living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee. Through quiet conversations, Victoria heard they were bitter, isolated, and constantly complaining that she had stolen their inheritance. Ethan was facing fraud charges related to another failed scheme. She hadn't spoken to any of them since that night. She sat in an armchair by the fire, a mug of hot cocoa warming her hands. Grandma Monica sat across from her, resting peacefully with a small, content smile. Victoria looked at the stockings on the mantel. Victoria, James, Alex, Grandma. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was auditioning for her place at the table. She didn't feel the cold draft of rejection hanging over her. She looked forward as if speaking directly to someone listening. If someone is sitting there right now feeling the ache of a family that refuses to see them, feeling the sting of a door shut in their face, they need to hear this. They are not the problem. They are not difficult. They are not too much or not enough. They are simply standing in the wrong house. They should stop waiting on the porch for permission to belong. They should stop freezing themselves trying to be warm enough for people committed to staying cold. They should turn around, walk away, build their own fire. Because the only thing lost when cutting ties with toxic people is the pain of trying to please them. What is gained is everything. Victoria looked around the room at her son, her husband, her grandmother, and the peace she had built. She had gained everything.